afternoon. Hey, hey, hey. Happy um Money Monday, everybody. Today's live, we are going to be hitting on something that I think is very important. So this weekend, we read an article that was discussing um this young lady, a single mother of two or three, I believe. And the single mom had been arrested at work for leaving her 10-year-old child in the house um, to watch over her 2-year-old child. Now, the single mom, she worked at Little Caesars. So everybody has a ballpark idea of how much she was probably making an hour working at Little Caesars, even if a full-time employee, right? And so you know, in her situation, it led to her arrest. Within 24 hours, she was released. Family members were able to do a crowdfunding for her. And so she was blessed through this set of unfortunate circumstances to be given about $150,000 through this crowdfunding, right? Because it ended up trending a little bit, going viral. And this all just happened within the last week or so. Okay, so why am I mentioning this? This person was putting in work. A lot of us have been in that situation, myself included, working countless hours just trying to make ends meet. In this situation, she's obviously homeless if she's living out of a motel room, you know? And so it's a situation where she's doing all that she knows how based on the knowledge and the information she possesses to try to get ahead, to try to survive. And so this live is really focused around the fact that surviving can easily lead to a slippery slope, you know. In most situations, some type of unforeseen circumstance like that wouldn't lead to it going viral, wouldn't lead to being able to crowdfund thousands of dollars almost overnight or within a week's time or a 10-day time because people can relate to the circumstances and the fact that they as a parent or their parents had to do the same, right? So my number one piece of it, um, my number one desire when I seen the crowdfunding had happened was that she is equipped with now the resources and the information to be able to avoid it going forward. Because that's what's going to change that circumstance. The money alone won't solve her problem. She'll be able to buy a house, but she still won't be able to afford to sustain the requirements that come with the house. That lead to a lot of Black homeowners losing their properties, right? Even if she bought the house cash, there's still property taxes and utility bills and all those things. And if she didn't make enough previously to sustain herself, as while living in a motel room and not being able to afford childcare, it's not going to change because she was given $150,000, right? And so that is where information and strategy plays a huge role, right? A lot of people put in the work based on the fact that they're trying, they do something. They're clocking in these jobs. They're applying for these jobs. They're working countless hours. They're they're doing what we were told to do. They're bootstrapping it. And facts of the matter is, bootstrapping it will not get you out of poverty alone. It'll help cushion the blow of poverty a little bit. You might be able to afford a few nice things or not be as poor as the poorest person in your community, but you're still going to be in poverty because escaping poverty requires having leverage and freedom to be able to tap into income outside of what you need to live. It requires having resources or options at your disposal that won't allow for one thing to completely flip your life 180, you know? And so we were discussing how without strategy and information, you're just going to find yourself constantly repeating different versions of the same cycle. And so what does that mean? That means in a situation like this where you now have this lump sum of money at your disposal. You now have time to effectively look into your options, to be there for your children, to fight the legal battle that she's now going to have to go through in the court system, connected to parenting, right? As well as the criminal system connected to the negligent charge that got her arrested in the first place at work. And now the possible unemployment going forward because she now has the fact that she was taking from work, right? They could easily classify that as a no call, no show situation and fire her because of the circumstances of the fact that minimum wage is not a livable wage, right? So strategy becomes super important. In this time, my desire for her and my tip for everybody that is tuning in today would be, do you have a way? Do you have a plan in place today to allow for you to generate money despite all hell breaking loose in the world, despite you not being able to get up today to go to work and make exactly what you need for tomorrow's bills? Do you have an income stream that isn't at the mercy of an employer, right? Do you have the ability to have all of your expenses covered for a month, 2 months, 3 months, if something was to happen to you and um, mess up what's going on with your day-to-day life for a little while, right? Do you have an emergency fund? Do you have a savings account? Do you have anything like that? In the event you don't have those, do you have any type of leverage you can use to tap into that money if you needed it? Because that's going to be an important one. This lady was arrested on the job for just trying to work to take care of her kids. And now she's in a situation where she needs to be able to get herself out of jail and these types of things. Well, typically, to be able to get out of jail in between the time you're arrested and the time of your court appearances and things requires being able to post bond, post bail. So can you afford to, do you have any type of resources that you can even leverage to post bail? You have money? Do you have credit? Do you have it? Because then it puts you in a situation where you're at the mercy of the court, right? And justice looks different for everybody. Facts of the matter, right? So it's like there's some fundamental things you have to have strategy for, and you have to be kind of strategically setting up those plans of actions, even when you don't feel like you have enough to be considering it yet. You might not be able to afford to save $100 or invest $100 or anything of that nature today. But I'm pretty sure if you have an income source, then you have the ability to at least set 10% aside, $1 aside, $10 aside, $5 aside, wherever your starting point is. But the problem is a lot of people, they think money alone will solve their problem. And then secondly, they believe that once they have the money, they can figure out how to handle the money. And 100% of the time, when people who have never managed money well are given a lot of money, they don't do well with it. Unless there's somebody or an external factor that does possess these skills taking on a hands-on role in it. Truly need to learn about. Are you going to be teaching about Bitcoin? So Bitcoin is just one cryptocurrency. Quite frankly, there are a lot of cryptocurrencies I like a bit more. I feel like Bitcoin is too high for the average person to be able to afford to get in it at this point. Bitcoin is over $50,000 for a singular one. If your budget is $100, $500, $1,000, that really isn't even really touching the tip of the iceberg when it comes to having leverage with Bitcoin. So that, I feel like that ship has sailed for the average person, or for that person just starting out investing, unless they have a nice little nest egg. It's just you don't have enough leverage at this point. Meanwhile, right, Bitcoin is up for me. Bitcoin is up about 600%. from where I initially invested because I got in when it was 8,000, right? Um, but Litecoin is one of those where we also got in at I got in at $40. Litecoin is at up over $200 now, right? Even if you put $20 in Litecoin, you would easily be up 400%, 500%, and you would have been able to see some real returns on your investment no matter how many you bought. So it's a situation where it's like and Bitcoin and Litecoin, the reason why I'm mentioning Litecoin of all of them is because Litecoin and Bitcoin are the two most commonly placed ATMs you can find, right? Those are the two most commonly placed high volume cryptocurrency ATMs you can find. So both of those are going to kind of weigh similarly in that extent. So that's why I mentioned that. And Litecoin is spelled with TE, not GHT. So cryptocurrency though is one of those where it's definitely good to have some stake in the game. The problem is cryptocurrency doesn't really have something that um, manages it, or it doesn't have financials to back it up to the same extent. So we will cover it, but not to the same extent that we cover equity investments, because we are fundamental investors that and you need to have something to base your growth potential and your scalability and your portfolio expansion on. And cryptocurrencies, many of them don't really avail that. A lot more cryptocurrency is invested in based on industry trends, or technical analysis of chart patterns and stuff like that. And that is great when you already have your safety blanket secure types of investments already in place. So we have some things that acknowledge cryptocurrency investing, but it is not at the center or a big focal point in the investor strategies that we put an emphasis on or teach or give you a lot of resources for, because it's it's not as easy to assess the risk and growth potential and things like that. A lot of people, this Bitcoin thing is trending because it's literally hitting new highs all the time. It's not even trending off the fact that PayPal and Square started allowing for you to purchase it through their platforms months ago. Actually, Square has been over a year now. Is trending off of like social media, and at that point, you you buy the rumors, you sell the news. At this point, Bitcoin has truly already, the news is already released. So if you weren't in when the rumors were just kind of down there being whispered about, like you need to have way more leverage to consider it now. Um, so that's going to be one of the things. But yeah, that is something that we provide resources for. It's not something we really dive into, because before you start thinking about cryptocurrency, you need to have a starter portfolio that has stability and growth capabilities. And so those are going to be, for some people, that's going to be your index funds, your ETFs. For other people, it's going to be thoroughly researched, fundamentally selected stocks. Typically, a lot of times you will be recommended not to buy individual stocks first. Most financial experts will not advise you to buy individual stocks first. They'll say get your safety blanket kind of investment portfolio with a minimum of 10K in it, with something kind of managed by money managers that follow the index, like the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones or something of that nature. So they're going to say get your first 10K, get that in the index fund that has a set minimum growth potential of somewhere between 10 to 12%, right? So your S&P 500 or something like that, SPYG, right? That follows the S&P 500, but that focuses on the growth potential side, or the SPYD, which focuses on the high yield dividend side, right? That's going to give you a 10% dividend yield growth annually. Those are actually the SPYG, SPYD are a lot more affordable because they're ETFs that follow the most popular and most effective in the S&P 500. So those you can afford to get into at $50 a share or 20 or 30 something dollars a share. That's going to allow for you to buy a lump sum, have that money growing and being managed and handled by people who are experts in the industry. And then you're now going to have your fund money to feed into crypto or feed into specific stocks. But a lot of people in our community have gotten into it because word of mouth, or they heard through the grapevine, or they seen a status, or they noticed a hashtag trending on their timeline, and then they hopped in it. And so that leads us to the next thing about why surviving without strategy is a slippery slope. One of the things we posted this weekend, probably Friday more so, we were watching Power Lunch, and Power Lunch was pulling the reports about 2020. So 2020, the Black community of investors doubled. The stock investors, cryptocurrency investors, ultimately brokerage firm holding investors more than doubled, which was awesome. That means twice as many Black people are investing today, or as of the end of 2020, than were prior, which is phenomenal, right? That's what we want. We want to see us being intentional with our money and understanding that things don't happen overnight. Scam flowers were not real, but brokerage accounts can be effective investment strategies, right? Here's the problem though. Over 90% of those people who joined as investors last year, they joined because of a recommendation or suggestion from somebody personally. Like they weren't marketed to, they weren't really given guidance to take the steps. They stumbled upon it to some extent, right? Or heard through the grapevine. And then secondly, when surveys were done to conduct the level of investment knowledge possessed by the Black investors who had started investing in 2020, they knew they scored 1.5 out of 10. Now, everybody has taken a standardized test. 1.5 out of 10 is an F. It's like a real bad F, which means they didn't possess a large amount of financial literacy or education to be now investing in this way. So what that means is we got a lot of Black investors out here that have transitioned from scam flowers to actual brokerage accounts, but with no knowledge of how to actually build on their portfolio effectively in a brokerage account. And majority of these investors, more than half of the investors that signed up last year, like 2/3, were between 30 and 59 years old. And they're doing it because they know they didn't have financial security from their job. They knew they didn't have too much of a savings plan or a retirement plan in place. So people are trying to now make up the difference for what they lacked for years. And so it's great to take the step, but the step without any type of information, any type of instruction, without having adequate resources to guide you, will lead to a lot of loss. People lose everything in the market daily. There are people that lose everything from a bad investment on a daily basis. And the problem, that's not to scare you. That's to make you really, really intentional about about the decisions you make. If you are investing, what type of investor are you? Are you a long-term investor? Are you a short-term investor? Are you a trader? Are you a fundamental investor? Are you a speculator? We talked about it in a different live. Speculating means you're taking guess, or you're just buying it because you use the brand, not because you actually know anything about the performance of the stock, which can drastically vary from the company's performance, right? I mean, which can drastically vary from the company's performance in some ways if you're speculating, right? Are you a trader? Because that requires uh you being more technical, That means you need to be able to assess patterns and trends and be able to really give a lot more attention to detail when it comes to stock performance, stock pricing performance, stock movements, and share prices and things of that nature. Or are you a fundamental investor? That means you need to look at these people's books. It's the equivalent of you going in there, but let me see what you made this month. Like, you're looking at the financials, you're looking at how they performed this year, you're looking at what they made, you're looking at what they made it from, you're looking at their profit margins, you're looking at their growth over a period of time, the projections, the estimates of what they expected to see for that period of time versus what they actually achieved. You're looking at all of it. Where's the money going that they're making? Like, and fundamentals, depending on your industry, depending on your stock, is ultimately fundamentals are typically going to happen. I mean, financials are typically going to be released 4 times a year. So 4 times a year, it's time to assess how are they progressing? How is your company doing? What type of performance are they upholding based on what your goals and your desires are? You know, and that's completely different. That requires being a reader. That requires understanding how to calculate and assessing thoroughly what's going on with that money. Like, they not just throwing it in the bin and be like, "Oh, it's some money there." Like, that's no longer sufficient, you know. So, those are going to be super important when you get to that phase. But a lot of people aren't even at the phase where they are prioritizing thinking about investing. They're still at the phase of just trying to get past their own insecurity about the ability to have money. And so before you can get to the investing phase, you need to get to the phase where you have the ability to delegate money without needing to go back for it. And what I mean by that is, if you had $1,000, if you said, I'm gonna save 200 of this dollars, and you actually saved it and it stayed there for the period of time that you had planned for it to stay there. So 6 months, a year, or you set a goal. My goal is to save $5,000. I'm gonna take every time I see this amount, I'm just gonna take the lump sum out. I'm gonna take out 200 every time. Well, that 200 should be adding on itself. It shouldn't be a situation where the first moment you're put in a position where you need to get some quick cash, you go pull from that 200 that you saved. That's going to be the first thing, because before you can invest, right, where the taxation is way higher, especially if you're a trader, you're talking close to 30+% if you invest in something and take it out in less than a year just because it has a little bit of profit. So before you can invest consistently, you got to be able to let money sit consistently. You got to be able to save and stick to your saving plan or your saving strategy. Do you have the ability to do that? Because a lot of people, they count what's in their savings as extra money for whatever they got currently going on. And it literally can't function that way. Your savings has to be your strategy money. So you have to have the ability to even strategize. I'm setting this aside with this goal in mind, with this timeline or this plan to be executed. And so once you do that part, then you have the ability to now say, okay, I saved this over the last 6 months. Now I'm about to take this money that I saved without touching, without borrowing from it and putting it back the next time I got paid again. Now I'm going to take this money I saved and I'm going to put this money in an investment tool, you know? And most investments are going to require at least a year from you, minimum, truthfully, to truly see the types of returns you want to be able to see, to allow for, the little moments to happen in between that may pull back on it a tiny bit before it catapults even further ahead. That's going to require a time sacrifice for you. And so you need to be able to do it in something that's super easy to get in and get out before you toss it into an investment avenue where it's just going to cost you. You might put in $200, make an extra $100 just to be taxed on 30 to 40% of it. Then that means you made $60. Like, why? Why would you want to sacrifice the potential growth versus if you would have waited a year, you would have made closer to $90, 85, $90. Like just being willing to give a tiny bit more time sacrifice, it completely transforms your ability to progress down that path. Um, and so that also requires you being able to take time to learn, you being able to consistently take time to build on what you're learning. That's how you get out of survival mode. Survival mode keeps you busy. You're doing whatever you're taking, whatever you can to keep things barely just at least going. I'm not going to say stable. I'm going to say to keep things kind of, that person that puts $5 in the tank, like they ride but they put $5 in the tank every time they know they might be getting just a little bit too close to the car stopping on them. And they keep riding out that five. They keep riding out that five. That's what surviving is like. While investing is like, all right, I'm about to fill this bad boy up and I'm about to let it go to work for all of these things. And it's like the best example I can give is it's like driving for Uber, right? Say you drive for Uber or drive for Lyft, and you literally put $5 in to see how many rides, how much you can make from rides with that little bit you got. Versus investment is going to be, I'm gonna fill up this tank and I'm gonna drive until I'm on E and see what my profit margins are. And I almost can guarantee your profit margins will be 100 times better within the same time frame. If they both started at 8 a.m. that morning and did that two different ways, I can 100% guarantee that the person who filled up the tank at the first thing in the morning and just rolled it out, I can guarantee they made more money than the person that kept just going with the flow, like just doing just enough, riding it out until they had just enough, and then taking it and then going to go get another five. Because one, it becomes very distracting. It keeps you so distracted that you can't focus on making sure that you're effectively executing. That's why surviving doesn't work. That's why it is necessary to get out of a surviving mindset. As long as you are surviving, as long as you are looking for this quick fix or this guarantee, it keeps you too busy to effectively strategize and execute over a duration. And it impedes on your ability to have the endurance needed to make the types of strides you're going to make, right? It might be a slow period. It might be periods where everything just flourishes, and it might be periods where some of the momentum picks up in a slower duration. But if you're used to the instant gratifications, like I went to work to make this $60 today, if you're looking for those types of guarantees, it puts you in a state of instability always. So it becomes super, super necessary to have the mental capacity to strategize, to have the mental capacity to save without backsliding or borrowing from it, to have the mental capacity to do the work to learn something that you don't know, to execute on it, and to not touch it, to let time work to allow for it to grow, to expand, to elevate the ways it's supposed to. All of those things are fundamental moving pieces to get out of a survival state of existence where any one thing can literally flip your life upside down and get into a state where you're progressing and strategy is able to effectively be executed and built upon. Because what happens is you allow for more of those to happen simultaneously. You got this strategy going on over here. You got that strategy going over there. And what most likely ends up happening for most of us, because you have so many different moving pieces happening, one moving, they match each other. They make up for what the other is not capable of doing, right? The shirts end up far surpassing in sales when the course isn't, or the winter stuff, right? Us, we have a 5 business model, right? People are focused on credit one time of the year. People are focused on certain things when they get their refund checks, focused on other things when they get their stimulus money, focused on another thing when weather hits a certain way. So if you have multiple streams going, if you have multiple strategies going, once they're executed, you now have the time that you don't have to kind of be bearing over it to allow for that to function and grow and meet a need when it's necessary. And you have this one that's doing this when it's necessary. And then the dividends are doing that when that's necessary. And they end up filling in the gaps in between because you're effectively able to give them time to fire off when they need to individually fire off in your best interest, versus you hoping and tying all your hope, your needs, your requirements to this one source. And you're at the mercy of this one source. If anything happens to go wrong with it, everything falls apart. Nobody deserves to live like that. Nobody. So those are some of the fundamental reasons why you a surviving type of habit or lifestyle will not work for anybody. It will always lead to a slippery slope because stuff happens. Okay, everybody. I hope that helped you. In the event you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments or DM us on any of these platforms or email us. Um, if you haven't, feel free to sign up for the free masterclass. The last one was awesome. You have the ability to just opt to view the recording of one of the previous ones. But I'm going to tell you, attending live is so much better. What ends up happening is, one, you start to find your tribe. Two, the questions to get asked are so invaluable on their own. The types of questions we had asked at the very last free masterclass was truly phenomenal. We easily shared a couple of $100 worth of tips just in answering those questions during the Q&A section. Um, that was it. We love you guys to life. We'll be back next week for another one. We have the Melanated Exchange Market happening this Sunday in Charlotte, NC. So come out if you guys are in that area. We also have the Get Your Life course happening this Saturday online. That's the 5+ hour virtual course where we deep dive into everything. Some of our old attendees have already started joining the exclusive Facebook group to support that and tapping into the additional resources that we put there for that team. That course easily should be worth over $1,000. And last time I checked, it's like under $100. So you guys can definitely check that out if you already attended any of our our free masterclass, or you've been following us. Yeah, that was it. I love you guys to life and enjoy your Monday. Let's touch base next week.